going on, everyone? Alex Miller from the Eagle here, joined by Travis Brown and Robert Cessna. We're here from Faurot Field in Columbia, Missouri. Texas A&M taking down the Missouri Tigers this afternoon, 35-14. Cease, A&M had control of the game pretty much the whole way through, but, really kind of missed some chances to really put it on the Tigers, even though it was pretty much a dominating game.
Yeah, I think you hit on it. They jumped out 21-0, and I feel like a lot of the air went out of the bubble. I feel that A&M knew they had the game, and they are young. They still make mistakes, and I think we saw that. I think if you got a veteran team, it might have been 61-7 or 61-14. But and I know we're all working our stories, but you got to live with youth. I mean, the youth made a lot of mistakes, and I kind of expect that. I think the main thing you got to emphasize on is they took a 21-0 lead. The game was over.
Yeah, Travis, we knew coming into this game that Missouri was very bad at defending the run. What'd you kind of make of the day that Isaiah Spiller and Devon Achane combined to have?
This is a game that we knew that if those two could step up and have a big game, that's really all A&M needed with how bad. I mean, it literally is the worst rush defense in the country, and that's exactly what they did. They both crossed the 100-yard mark. Spiller was pretty darn close. I think he was right at 164 or something like that. Pretty close to 200 yards rushing today. That's really ultimately all they needed with how they were able to run and set up some of those scores in the run in the first half. Things got a little bit wonky there in the second half. Both teams had really long drives that kind of sucked the energy out of the game and did some weird stuff. But ultimately, it was the run game that set up those initial scores, and that's all A&M needed.
I think it was Antonio Johnson after the game said that Jimbo Fisher told the team earlier this week that this could be a trap game. The Aggies didn't take the cheese, but Cease, were you impressed with the way that A&M was able to follow up last week's win over Alabama today?
Yeah, because you expected a little bit of a letdown. Also, this is their first true road game. Once again, all these young players. Calzada still learning, and I really think Calzada had a very average to below average game. He missed too many receivers on little screen passes and whatever, but I expected that. I didn't really expect A&M jumped out to 21-0 lead, so I will say that. The offensive line, they retweaked it again. They went with the Mississippi State offensive line. They put Johnson back at the tackle, moved Green back to guard, which I think that's the line they like, and they got good results except for a couple penalties. So, answering your question is, they did what they had to, and it didn't surprise me. Thing surprised me was they did it so easily at the start to get 21. And I give the defense a lot of credit because this was a pretty good offense against bad teams, but that wasn't a good offense because A&M's defense made it bad.
I put in my three takes, one of them that they did what they needed to win, and they didn't let down after Alabama, but overall it was kind of a little bit of a meh performance outside of Isaiah Spiller and Devon Achane. The passing game was a little bit on and off. Not only did Zach Calzada, like you said, have about an average game, he had a lot of drops too. The wide receivers, and some of them were passes that probably they really should have caught. And then defensively, beginning of the game, very strong. Second half, things got a little weird. I think they bit on some eye candy a little bit too much. Some of the motion, some of the play fakes and stuff that Eli Drinkwitz was throwing out there. So overall, if they go out and play like this against Auburn, or if they go out and play like this against Alabama again, they're getting beat.
Travis, you wrote earlier this week about how Antonio Johnson was going to come home. First career interception today. What did you make of his game? And I mean, he's been one of A&M's better defenders this season.
Yeah, I mean, he is. And the interesting part is he's not necessarily been known for his ball hawking skills. He's a guy who is a hard tackler and will make the good open field tackle. And he made a good interception today in that game. And winning the turnover battle was a huge part of the beginning and getting that lead early in the game. It's a special moment for him. He had about 60 people. I talked to his mom before the game. It's 50 to 60 friends and family out here. A place that he came to games at growing up here in Illinois. He's from East St. Louis. And the guy he was marking all day was, you have your stat sheet there. What was his name? Dominic Lovett was a East St. Louis graduate himself, a guy he played with, so that was fun for him too.
I'm writing my sidebar on the 3rd and 17 conversion that A&M had in the third quarter. A&M was only 3 of 9 on third downs today, but 2 of those conversions were touchdowns in the first quarter to build the 21-0 lead. And then that 3rd and 17 conversion that ultimately led to the touchdown drive. When Missouri kind of had a sniff of a comeback coming, what did it say about A&M that they were able to kind of shut the door right there in that third quarter?
Well, it's kind of interesting because there was 2 bad plays by Missouri. When you look at this game, Missouri right off the bat crossed midfield with a 16-yard completion, but they're called for an illegal shift, interception, next play by Johnson, and that started the game being over. The problem was Missouri just couldn't stop shooting themselves in the foot. They had a season high for penalties. They were just horrible. But once again, I give A&M a little credit. They're on the road. They did what they had to. And, Travis touched on it. Jimbo's going to light into them on this game film. He's got to go in and said, if we were really good, we'd beat these guys 61-7. I mean, all these times that they had lots of plays. And, I know someone asked if I don't go down the post game because I'm trying to get other things done. I thought they got away from the run game at times, but I know why they got away from it, because they're going to need the passing game to beat other teams. You're not going to rush for 400 yards against Alabama or LSU. And the plays they didn't make in the passing game were going to cost them against the other teams, maybe even South Carolina. So there's a lot of things they got to, get together. But let's check all the check marks for what they did right. They won the game, da-da-da-da. And as you mentioned, it was dicey. How many times you're going to overcome 2nd and 27 or whatever it was? They did more than enough to win, but yet, hey, Seth Small missed 2 field goals. I mean, come on. They did a lot of things wrong and won by 21 points.
Yeah, it was interesting, too, because early in the game, it looked like Missouri thought A&M was going to come out firing and throwing the ball around a lot, because they played pretty well over the top, which really opened up that run game that was already struggling to begin with. In the second half, Jimbo was right. They did stack the box and bring a lot of guys in, and they brought a lot of guys in pre-snap. Sometimes they would bounce out into zone coverage on some of the outside guys, but it just really wasn't necessarily conducive for running, and especially for a young quarterback who needs to continue to make his reads on what the defense is doing. Yeah, there were some times where those guys bounced out into zone coverage, and there was guys who were covered, and there wasn't necessarily some great passing lanes. But just that next progression of reading defenses and going through his progressions and seeing who's open in those situations.
Well, Cease, we'll close with this. I'm sure readers will get into your full grades later, but overall, how would you grade A&M's performance, and what does this win do for the Aggies?
Well, I think you're kind of looking like a B- because you want to go ahead and cross everything off. But yeah, you left a lot of things out there. Like I said, how many times Seth Small going to miss 2 field goals? And one of them was over 50 yards, but they thought he could make it. And just that kind of says where A&M is. A&M still has a lot of talent, but they make a lot of mistakes yet. And this is game 7. So you look at starting the second half. Calzada needs to play better, even in a game like that. Is Travis Smith, your receivers? Hey, you might say Preston and Demas. These guys are going to play. It looks like so they can't be dropping those balls. They can't be doing this. Wiedemeyer can't be dropping. So all these things, they're going to have another game where they're going to be heavily favored. But we saw what happened today with Auburn. We saw what happened today with LSU. A&M's going to have to get better if they want to beat Ole Miss, Auburn, and LSU. And today was a step forward, but they didn't take 3 steps forward. I think they took 1.
And one more thing to ask you about Cease too is, I know it was a long time ago and the programs have definitely changed, but A&M exercised some demons today, getting a win here. It's a place they haven't won. You've been around for those. What do you remember about some of those games and what A&M was able to do today to get rid of that little small bit of a losing streak?
Well, you mentioned, Travis, you come in here, and we were driving in together, and, we buddy around with Brent Zornham, and you come here, it just doesn't feel like you're coming to a big SEC game. And it was always like this. It's just different territory. You look out, they announced the crowd. The crowd really wasn't a great crowd, as far as getting into it. And they come here, and it's a struggle. They struggled in the past because Gary Pinkel had some very good teams. And they come in here, and they were really up for A&M, and they beat them. And so you even go back when A&M lost to Missouri after they beat Oklahoma. I remember that game. A&M was flying high. So once again, is coming to Missouri. A lot of teams come here and lose. They lose these games, and so A&M's got to feel real good about this. Is not a good Missouri team, but they kept them a bad Missouri team. Anytime you beat go someplace and won where you haven't won, and I know these guys aren't connected to 8 years ago, but it's always there. Just like A&M lost all those games to Alabama, just like Arkansas lost all those games to A&M, couldn't wait to beat them. You feel real good. So A&M does feel good about winning at Missouri.
And they did it with Gary Pinkel in the house because he was doing the drum at the beginning of the so they did it with him in the house.
Okay, cool.
Well, there you go. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. And be sure to check theeagle.com and Sunday's paper for all of our coverage here from Columbia. For Travis Brown and Robert Cessna, I'm Alex Miller. We'll see you next week.